Why want to go afar where pitfalls are, when all we swains adore your featness more and more as heroine of our artless maskings here, and count few Wessex daughters half so dear? Why paint your appealing face, when its born grace is such no skill can match with powder, puff, or patch, whose every touch defames your bloomfulness, and with each stain increases our distress? Yea, is it not enough that, rare or rough, your lines here all uphold you, and as with wings enfold you, you must needs desert the kine cropped vale, wherein your foredames gaily filled the pail?
Well, this poem is about Gertrude Bugler, who was actually one of the members of the original Hardy Players right back in the sort of 1910s, 1920s, and whose successors have been appearing in so many of our videos. Now, it's quite a story, actually, because Hardy first got to know her in 1913 when she was a teenager. And then fast forward to this poem, which is 9 years later. A lot of things have happened. Hardy has married Florence. Obviously, the First World War has come and gone. And Gertrude herself has actually got married and had a baby. But now, tell us what's going on in this poem.
Well, Gertrude Bugler had been playing the part of Tess of the d'Urbervilles, in a local production at the Corn Exchange here in Dorchester. And it'd been very successful. And actually, she'd been spotted, we think, by a critic from London, and she'd actually been asked to play the part up in the West End.
But then something has kind of gone wrong. Because Hardy's almost telling her not to do that. What's happened?
Well, we think it's possibly some pressure from Florence Dugdale, his wife, who became very jealous of the attention that she was getting, not just from the critics and the local people, but obviously from Hardy himself. And she was persuaded not to go up to the West End, shall we say, and play the part.
I mean, I think in a way this is quite sad, actually, not least because not only did she at that time not get to the West End, but because after this poem she actually never saw Hardy again. He died a few years later.
And she was quite upset by the whole business. I think she'd become very fond of him. He'd helped her during rehearsals. He'd given her some sort of instructions when he was watching the rehearsals of various productions. She'd also played Marty in The Woodlanders that he'd enjoyed. And I think it is sad that after this poem, they were never together again.
I think the only kind of, in a way, saving grace on that is that after Hardy had died, there was a sort of rapprochement almost between Florence and Gertrude. And Gertrude did end up going to the West End, and she performed Tess 60 times in the West End, which is really rather wonderful, actually.
In this poem, An Expostulation, you have the narrator essentially arguing for Gertrude not to go to London, to stay here, not to play the part. And all the biographical evidence suggests that Hardy argued the reverse. Well, precisely what Hardy's feelings were for Gertrude is very hard to discern. Hardy had an extraordinarily mobile imagination, so that you can see him in some poems writing as though he's long dead, and in other poems he's in the present, but in other poems he can quite easily imagine himself as a young man who's fallen in love again, even though at this point he's in his mid-80s. So it's entirely plausible that he could persuade himself that he could ask himself the question of what might it have been like had he been younger and met her then they might have fallen in love. Those are the sort of questions which occur throughout Hardy's poetry and indeed actually in his novels as well.
Well, this poem really tells the final act in this fascinating story of the friendship between Thomas Hardy in his later years and Gertrude Bugler, this very talented young actress. And in the next video, we will be hearing another poem relating to the very last years of Hardy's life when he does look back at the nature of achievement. But before we move to that, let's listen once again to an expostulation.
Why want to go afar where pitfalls are, when all we swains adore your featness more and more as heroine of our artless maskings here, and count few Wessex daughters half so dear? Why paint your appealing face, when its born grace is such no skill can match with powder, puff, or patch, whose every touch defames your bloomfulness, and with each stain increases our distress? Yea, is it not enough that, rare or rough, your lines here all uphold you, and as with wings enfold you, you must needs desert the kine cropped vale, wherein your foredames gaily filled the pale?